Hello, I'm Invicta of Invicta's Art Photography, and I want to speak about my experiences working with the model and actor Ash Armand from the show Gigolos. Now, I can only speak from my personal experiences with Ash, which lasted between March 2014 to April 2015. After that, communication became spotty, and we both moved on to other things. I don't want to speak too much about the case, because a quick Google search will tell you all you need to know. But in summary, he pled guilty to felony counts of a certain type of unaliving and mayhem involving a 29-year-old woman he was associated with named Herleen Dulai. Some accounts say she was a former client, some say his girlfriend, and some say his business partner. She could have been all three. I don't know. All I know is she's no longer with us. My first contact with Ash was when I reached out to him about doing a photo shoot for my project called Long Hairs Magazine, which featured male models and interesting guys with long hair. When I first saw his photos on a modeling website, I was captivated by his look, and I knew he would be the perfect addition to my project. We exchanged messages and agreed to collaborate. He was very professional and polite in his communication, and I was very excited to work with him. At the time, he was on the show Gigolos, but I hadn't seen it. Our first photo shoot was at Nelson Ghost Town, outside of Las Vegas, sometime in 2014. I remember being very impressed by how down-to-earth, soft-spoken, and humble he was. It was like a dream come true. We had this amazing location full of old abandoned buildings, old cars, a very Western feel, and we just had a blast finding all these nooks and crannies to shoot in. As I typically do, we started off fully clothed and eventually progressed to shirtless photos. He was a complete gentleman and very easy to work with, following my direction without hesitation, even when I discovered a mining setup with a pile of charcoal. Toward the end of our shoot, I had my assistant oil him up, and we rubbed him with charcoal and had him pose with a shovel as if he was a hard-working miner. Like I said, for our first time working together, I couldn't have asked for a better experience, and I hoped it would be the start of a great working relationship. However, there was one concerning thing that happened after I gave him my edited photos. He liked some of them, but I guess not all of them. I remember him saying he didn't like the way he looked in the shirtless photos, and that he wanted to get into better shape before our next photo shoot. That blew me away, because I thought he looked great. Imagine having this body and thinking it's not good enough. But this just goes to show you how much pressure these models and actors have to look a certain way, to be incredibly lean, incredibly shredded, to have these bodies that can often only come with the use of supplements like testosterone or fat burners, which can have negative effects on one's health over time and lead to negative behavioral changes. I don't know if he was having some body dysmorphia issues or other mental health struggles. All I know was that he felt the need to achieve a certain physical result and did what it took to get there, at whatever cost. Our second shoot was only a couple months later, so any changes he might have implemented hadn't really shown up yet. But I think it was still a very successful shoot, just like the first. I think this was shot at one of his friends' houses, but I don't really remember now. It was just some house in Las Vegas, and we shot all throughout the place. We got some cozy bedroom shots by the window, which made me think of a romance novel cover. Then on the bed, both clothed and shirtless. Overall, he seemed very relaxed and in good spirits for this shoot as well. Everything went smoothly, if I remember right. I really love these shots we got in the bathroom, especially this one on his stomach. Again, all I see is perfection when it comes to his body. And I think we were even discussing the idea of doing a calendar with our photos when we had enough to work with, which I eventually did. The house had a pool in the backyard, so he obliged me with some wonderful pool photos, which I think are amazing. For some reason, I think he photographs really well with water elements. Maybe because I always associated him with such a calm, easygoing personality. So this shoot was another success in my opinion, and we got a lot of useful photos out of it. Our third shoot was at a beach outside of Malibu. Maybe it was Paradise Cove, I can't remember which one. The name sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not sure. There's endless beaches down there. I remember meeting up and him taking me in his car to the location. It was surreal driving around the beautiful Malibu hills in his nice car, but I can't remember what it was. Sorry, I'm not a car person. I just remember it was sleek and fun to ride in. He was in good spirits and we chit-chatted as we wound around the gentle curves of the road. By this time it had been about 8 months since our first shoot, and I could definitely tell he'd been putting in work on his body. His muscles were not only larger overall, but much more defined. He seemed a lot more confident in himself, too. We wandered around to various parts of the beach, and just the whole experience had something of a fairy tale quality to it. I love the ocean. I grew up in a coastal town, so I feel very relaxed in this environment. And like I said earlier, ash and water just lights my fire. So with every click of the camera, I was just in heaven. This was one of those days that you take mental snapshots of and cherish forever. Everything was just perfect. I had instructed him to walk down some stairs, and I distinctly remember taking a mental snapshot of that exact moment, as the gentle sea breeze lifted his hair, revealing that chiseled back, and thinking, this is one of my life's peak experiences. It just doesn't get better than this. Just that simple moment, and this whole day of playing with my camera, getting all these amazing shots, was just incredible. It wasn't any one specific thing that was done or said. It was just the overall vibe of this shoot, and it really made me love what I was doing and who I was doing it with. But there was one thing which in hindsight might have been a telltale sign of bad things to come, but I didn't think of it that way at the time. So when I shoot, I always start off with the clean, clothed, nice photos, and then progress to more relaxed and even adventurous photos as the shoot comes to a close. Like with the charcoal in our first shoot, you want to save the dirty shots for last because there's no getting clean after that without a full shower. At the beach, we'd pretty much exhausted our options, and I decided it was time to get the dirty shots. Photos of him rolling around in sand. That's a pretty typical request, if you ask me, for a glamour model at the beach. How many photos have you seen of a model laying down and getting sandy? It's a very common thing to shoot. But for the first time, Ash gave me some pushback. He didn't want to get dirty in the wet sand. He said his jeans were really expensive and he didn't want to get them dirty, and overall just seemed hesitant. I was pretty taken aback by this, considering sand is pretty easy to clean up, at least compared to charcoal, and he was willing to do that on our first shoot. I didn't think a little sand would scare him off. But I think I was witnessing the very beginnings of a personality change, and didn't recognize it for what it was at the time. Why would he be willing to get all oiled up and rubbed with charcoal only 8 months prior? And now he was reluctant to roll around in the sand, which would fall right off the second he got dry. Maybe he had somewhere important to be after the shoot, or thought he would get his car dirty, I don't know. It just seemed a little weird to me at the time. But eventually he did acquiesce to my request, and we got some amazing shots in the sand like I knew we would. So at this point, his personality was mostly the old go-with-the-flow Ash, but maybe this new Ash was creeping in and would solidify in the months to come. Even considering that, I think this is one of my favorite shoots of ours overall. I'm glad he got over himself and did the sandy shots, as I think they really worked out and completed the day nicely. The last time we worked together was during a photography trip that I took down to SoCal in Las Vegas. It ended up being the last such trip I would do for my Long Hairs magazine project before getting sucked into writing a novel and putting photography on the back burner. I worked with some models in the LA area first, and one of the shoots took us to the Mojave Desert. I car camped out there after the shoot, enjoying the lovely quiet and being out in the middle of nowhere. And when it came time to leave the next morning and head into Vegas to shoot with Ash, I remember a very strong feeling of not wanting to leave the desert. And not only that, but not wanting to go to Las Vegas specifically and deal with the big city again and all that entailed. I think I was pretty exhausted by the whole trip at this point, and kind of just wanted to get the shoot with Ash over with so I could get back out into nature. Well, it turned out this feeling of dread was an omen of things to come. Now this shoot was a little bit different than the others because I was commissioned to get a romance novel cover along with the other photos we were going to take. Without getting too much into the business side, Ash and I had worked together on a collaborative basis, with the agreement that he and I could both use the photos to our own ends and profit off of them as we saw fit. We split the modest proceeds from the calendar I made with his photos. This was a mutually beneficial relationship as I saw it. He and I both ended up licensing some novel covers, and we both had photos to post to our respective social media. And he was able to use my photos on the website associated with the business behind the TV show Gigolos. But this last shoot in April of 2015 was memorable for the wrong reasons. First, like I said, I had a feeling of dread about it, all the way out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. If I hadn't agreed to deliver this novel cover to this author, I might have just canceled the whole shoot. It was that bad. Something in me did not want to go to Vegas that day. I actually cried a little when I turned the key in the ignition. It was an almost spiritual reaction that left an impression on me. I believe the shoot was at his house, but in all honesty, I can't remember if it was his house or another friend's house. It was just another cookie-cutter house tucked away in a gated suburb. But I want to say it was at his place. I'm just not 100% sure. It's been so long. Weirdly, I was having trouble getting the gate open with the code he gave me. I tried several times, and for some reason, it wasn't opening. So I finally called him. And I remember to this day, he seemed different over the phone. I don't recall exactly what he said, but it seemed like he was making fun of me for having trouble with the gate. And like he was annoyed right from the get-go. He seemed a bit rude, and coupled with my already not wanting to be there, it hit me that this was going to be a very different shoot than the others. I got anxious for the first time since we worked together. I finally got to his place, and I just remember it being big, spacious, with a high ceiling. A nice place, for sure. He looked great as usual, maybe a bit more ripped than before, but nothing crazy. I think he was hitting peak Ash physically, but his personality seemed markedly different. I remember an on-edge feeling about the whole shoot. Certainly I was anxious to get my cover photo in the bag, and whatever else we got was just icing on the cake. But beyond that, there was a sense of hurriedness about it that I just couldn't quite place. Maybe he had other commitments after me, but it seemed like he was just kind of go, go, go. Like maybe he was a little spun. Of course, I didn't see him take anything, but something in my gut just told me he wasn't quite right anymore. He was impatient, a little testy, and there was just a cold hardness to his personality that absolutely translated to the photos, which you can clearly see. I wasn't getting much I liked, and I definitely wanted to wrap the shoot as soon as possible. Now, I don't remember there being an actual argument or unprofessional words or behavior. It was just all very under the surface for me. Alarm bells were going off, but I was so busy just trying to maintain composure that I couldn't focus on much of our conversation at all. I just came away from the shoot thinking he'd changed into something I no longer recognized. Like I said, I didn't actually see anything or see him take anything. But personally, I wondered if maybe he was taking steroids or other substances that were affecting his personality. It just doesn't make sense otherwise. His body was certainly changing in ways that were suggestive of supplement use. And his personality was changing in ways that is consistent with the use of certain supplements. That's all I'm going to say, because I have no other evidence other than my own personal observations. But it would seem reasonable to conclude that he might have been taking things to maintain his chiseled physique that were having a negative effect on his personality. I might have been witnessing the beginning of the fall of Ash Armand. With that being said, it is critical that I mention that I did not fear for my safety during this final shoot or at any of our time together. Never did I witness any behavior that would lead me to believe that he was capable of what eventually happened in 2020. A person seeming on edge is one thing. A person doing what he did to Herleen is a completely different level of atrocity. All I'm saying with my story is that way back then, I witnessed a change in his personality on the last time that we worked together. It is my personal belief that substances that he may or may not have been taking, which I have no evidence of, could have contributed to personality changes, which might have then been magnified under the influence of illicit substances, which contributed to the death of Herleen Dulai. It was important to me to release this video before seeing the upcoming documentary, Sin City Gigolo, An Unaliving in Las Vegas, just to get my observations out there first, just in case anything in the documentary might shed light on what I witnessed back in 2015. Fundamentally, I believe Ash to be a good person who went astray and committed a horrible atrocity. I firmly believe if he was completely sober of all substances, this would not have happened. I'm not in any way excusing his behavior. I just think it's a very cautionary tale of how one thing leads to another, and someone may end up in a very different place than where they started. I hope if Ash is able to experience his freedom again, that he uses it to add more beauty and love to this world, and has learned from the hard lessons which he brought upon himself. I bet there's not a single day that goes by that he doesn't think about Herleen Dulai. God bless her, her family, and Ash too. May something good come of all this in the end. Amen.